The stars looked different in this sector of space. Captain Vexilon stood on the bridge of the illuminated path, his three eyes scanning the displays with growing interest. His crew had been mapping this region for 2 cycles now, documenting stellar phenomena and cataloging celestial bodies. It was routine work, the kind that kept the Galactic Council's records updated and scientific minds satisfied. Then the sensors picked up something unusual. "Captain, we have an object ahead," called out Science Officer Thelmora from her station. Her slender fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up data streams. "It's artificial. A vessel of some kind." Vexilon's antennae twitched with curiosity. Finding derelict ships was rare in uncharted space. Most species stuck to established trade routes and colonized systems. Whatever this was, it didn't match any known signature in their database. "Bring us closer." "Slowly," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep." The illuminated path glided forward, its advanced engines making no sound in the vacuum of space. As they approached, the mysterious vessel came into view on the main screen. It was smaller than their research ship, maybe 2/3 the size, with a design that looked both elegant and brutal. Scorch marks covered its hull and several sections showed visible damage. "Analysis," Vexilon requested. Thelmora worked quickly, her brow ridges furrowing in concentration. "The vessel appears to have survived significant trauma. Hull breaches in 3 sections sealed from the inside. Energy readings are minimal but present, suggesting emergency power only. Life support systems are active." "Life support?" That got everyone's attention. "Are there survivors?" "Possibly. But Captain, there's something else." Thelmora's voice carried a note of concern. "The atmospheric composition inside that ship is highly unusual. Oxygen concentration is at 21%. A collective gasp rippled through the bridge crew. Oxygen at those levels was corrosive, dangerous, and toxic to most known species. Only a handful of worlds in the entire galaxy had such extreme atmospheres, and they were all classified as hostile to life. Engineer Korvath stepped forward, his bulky frame casting a shadow across the console. "Captain, those readings can't be right. No spacefaring species could survive in that environment. It would burn their respiratory systems." "The readings are accurate," Thelmora insisted. "I've run the scan 3 times. Furthermore, the internal temperature is approximately 22 degrees standard, and the gravity is set to 1.0 ratio. These are Class 3 Deathworld conditions." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about Deathworlds. They were the nightmares of galactic civilization, planets so hostile that sentient life was considered theoretically impossible. Extreme gravity, toxic atmospheres, dangerous predators, unstable geology, all combining to create environments where survival was a constant battle. The Galactic Council had identified only 3 such worlds, and none of them had produced spacefaring civilizations. Until now, apparently. "Could it be automated?" asked Korvath hopefully. "Some kind of probe or drone from a Deathworld study mission?" Thelmora shook her head. "The ship's design suggests a crew compartment, living quarters, and what appears to be a medical facility. This is a crewed vessel. Someone from a Class 3 Deathworld built this ship and flew it into space." Vexilon felt his 2 hearts beating faster. This was a discovery of immense importance. If a Deathworld species had achieved space travel, it would revolutionize everything the galaxy knew about evolutionary development and survival. But it also meant potential danger. Creatures that evolved in such harsh conditions would be formidable, perhaps even aggressive. "Options," he said simply. Korvath spoke first. "We should maintain distance and send remote probes to investigate. Boarding that vessel could be extremely dangerous." "But if there are survivors, they may need assistance," countered Thelmora. "We cannot simply leave them to die. It goes against every principle of the Galactic Council." Vexilon considered both arguments. His duty was to his crew's safety, but also to the pursuit of knowledge and the preservation of life. A new species, especially one from a Deathworld, deserved the chance to join the galactic community. If they could survive on their own world, they had earned that right through sheer will and adaptation. "Prepare a boarding team," he decided. "Full containment suits rated for hostile environments. Science team, engineering team, and security escort. We'll dock with their airlock and attempt communication, but at the first sign of danger, we retreat immediately." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Within an hour, the boarding team was ready. They wore thick protective suits designed to withstand extreme conditions, with independent life support systems and reinforced plating. Weapons were set to non-lethal settings just in case. The illuminated path maneuvered alongside the damaged vessel. Up close, its construction became more apparent. The hull was made from some kind of metal alloy, dense and durable. The design was functional rather than artistic, built for purpose rather than beauty. There were markings on the side, symbols in a language that the translation matrix couldn't immediately decipher. "Initiating dock," announced the pilot. Mechanical clamps extended and locked onto the other ship's airlock. "Seal is secure." Vexilon watched from the bridge as the boarding team entered the airlock chamber. Through their helmet cameras, he could see everything they saw. The airlock cycled, equalizing pressure with the other vessel. Then the door opened. The interior was dark, lit only by emergency lighting that cast everything in a reddish glow. The boarding team moved cautiously through corridors that seemed designed for beings slightly taller than the average Zenthari. The walls were lined with pipes and cables, all clearly labeled in that unknown language. "Temperature rising," reported the team leader. 30 degrees and climbing. "Oxygen levels are increasing too. Stay alert," Vexilon advised. "Remember, anything from a Class 3 Deathworld will be extremely resilient." They passed through several compartments, finding equipment and supplies that hinted at the nature of the crew. There were containers of liquid, sealed packets of what might be food, and tools designed for manipulators with 5 digits rather than 4. Everything spoke of intelligence and technology, but also of something fundamentally different from any known species. Then they found the first door that was sealed differently from the others. It had a symbol on it that the translation matrix finally decoded. "Medical. Should we open it?" asked the team leader. Vexilon took a breath. This was the moment. "Open it." Carefully, the door slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. Inside was a small room filled with strange equipment. And lying on a raised platform was something that made everyone stop and stare. It was the crew member. A deathworlder, and it was looking right at them with eyes that showed both pain and determination. The being tried to sit up, and that's when Vexilon realized something truly remarkable. Against all odds, against all the damage and isolation, this creature from a Class 3 Deathworld was still alive. And it was about to change everything they knew about survival, strength, and what it meant to be human. The creature on the medical platform was unlike anything the Zenthari had ever encountered. It had a bilateral form with 4 limbs, 2 for locomotion and 2 for manipulation, just like many species in the galaxy. But that's where the similarities ended. Its skin was a tan-pink color, smooth in most places, covered with dark hair on its head. The face had 2 forward-facing eyes, a prominent nose, and a mouth that seemed capable of remarkable expression. Lieutenant Jake Morris tried to speak, but the words came out in a language that meant nothing to the boarding team. He could see the fear in their postures, the way they kept their distance even in their protective suits. He didn't blame them. If he'd found an alien ship in the middle of nowhere, he'd be cautious too. The team leader activated his translation matrix, hoping it could build a language database from the sounds Jake was making. It would take time, but eventually they might be able to communicate. Jake slowly raised his hands, palms out, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The movement made him wince as pain shot through his ribs. He'd been injured when the spatial anomaly hit, and without proper medical supplies, he'd been making do with basic first aid for weeks now. "I need to scan him," Thelmora said over the communication link. She was watching through the helmet cameras from the bridge. "We need to understand his physiology before we can help." The team leader nodded and produced a handheld scanner. He approached slowly, speaking in soft tones even though Jake couldn't understand the words. The scanner passed over Jake's body, collecting data and sending it back to the illuminated path. What Thelmora saw on her screens made her question everything she knew about biology. This human, as the translation matrix was beginning to identify his species, was a walking impossibility. His body contained iron-based blood that carried oxygen through a high-pressure circulatory system. His bones were dense, incredibly strong, designed to support his mass in heavy gravity. His muscles were efficient and powerful, capable of generating force that would rival some of the galaxy's strongest species. "How is he alive?" she whispered to herself. "Those oxygen levels should be burning his lungs. That temperature should be causing cellular damage. And according to these readings, he's been awake and active for weeks in a damaged ship with minimal resources. But Jake wasn't just alive. He was alert, watching his visitors with intelligent eyes that assessed and calculated. Despite his obvious injuries and the dire situation, he showed no signs of panic or despair. There was something in his expression that spoke of determination, of a will that refused to break no matter how bad things got. The translation matrix beeped. It had enough data now to start forming basic communication. Can understand me? Jake's words came through the speakers, heavily distorted but recognizable. Yes, the team leader responded. We help you injured. Jake nodded slowly. Ship, damaged, crew, sleeping. Can't wake them. Systems, broken. This was alarming news. There were more of these humans on board in some kind of stasis. The boarding team needed to find them and assess their condition. Jake seemed to understand their concern because he tried to sit up, clearly intending to guide them. Stay, the team leader insisted. We find them. You rest. But Jake was already swinging his legs off the platform, his face tight with pain but his movement steady. The Xanthari watched in amazement as he stood up despite injuries that should have left him bedridden. He grabbed a nearby wall for support, took a deep breath, and pointed down the corridor. Bridge, he said. Commander, their engine room. Engineer there must help them. The team had no choice but to follow this stubborn deathworlder as he limped through his own ship. Every step seemed to cost him, but he kept moving, driven by something deeper than physical comfort. The Xanthari began to understand that these humans possessed loyalty that went beyond survival instinct. They took care of their own no matter the cost. They found the bridge first. It was a compact space filled with displays and controls, all designed for human hands and eyes. Slumped over one console was another human, this one with longer hair and slightly smaller build. Commander Lisa Hayes was unconscious, a dark bruise visible on the side of her head. The medical specialist in the boarding team immediately went to work, scanning her vital signs. She's alive but in critical condition. Significant head trauma. She needs immediate medical attention. Jake knelt beside his commander, his expression pained. Lisa, hang on. Help's here. They carefully moved her onto a stretcher that the team had brought. The medical bay on the illuminated path was equipped to handle most emergencies, and while human physiology was unknown to them, the basics of trauma care were universal. Next came the engine room. They had to climb down a ladder, which Jake managed with visible difficulty. The room was hot even by human standards and filled with machinery that hummed with barely contained energy. Trapped behind a fallen panel was Chief Engineer Danny Price, his face covered in sweat and one arm bent at an unnatural angle. Jake? Danny's voice was weak but relieved. Please tell me those are the friendlies and not hostiles. Friendlies, Jake confirmed. They're here to help. It took 3 members of the boarding team working together to lift the panel that had Danny pinned. When they finally freed him, they could see that his arm was badly broken. But like Jake, the first thing Danny did was ask about the ship's condition. Did you stabilize the reactor? He asked Jake, best I could. But we need parts I don't have. The cryo systems. Still offline. That's why I couldn't wake anyone. The boarding team listened to this exchange with growing respect. These humans were discussing technical problems and crew welfare even while suffering from serious injuries. Their priorities were clear. Ship first, crew second, themselves last. Back on the illuminated path, Captain Vexilon was making decisions. Bring all the injured humans to our medical bay. Then I want a full survey team on that ship. We need to find the rest of the crew and assess what it will take to restore their systems. As the wounded humans were brought aboard, the Xanthari medical staff prepared for the challenge of treating a completely unknown species. They studied the scan data, trying to understand how to help beings who breathed poison and lived in conditions that would kill most life forms. Jake refused to be sedated until he'd explained the situation fully. Through the improving translation matrix, he told them about the Freedom's Echo and its mission of exploration. He described the spatial anomaly that had damaged their ship and knocked out critical systems. He explained about the crew in cryo-sleep, 23 people who were depending on him to keep them alive until help arrived. You've been alone for weeks, Thelmora said, her voice filled with wonder. How did you survive? Jake looked at her with those startling eyes. Because giving up wasn't an option. My crew needs me. We don't abandon each other. That's not what humans do. And in that moment, the Xanthari began to understand what it truly meant to be from a death world. It wasn't just about physical strength or resilience. It was about a spirit that refused to surrender, a determination forged in the crucible of a world that tried to kill you every day. Earth had created a species that simply would not quit. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The medical bay of the illuminated path became a center of controlled chaos. 3 injured humans required immediate attention, and the Zenthari medical staff worked carefully to understand their unique biology. Jake Morris insisted on staying conscious despite his injuries, serving as a guide to human physiology and medical needs. Our bones can be set with mechanical support, Jake explained through the translation matrix, which was now functioning much better. Danny's arm needs to be realigned and immobilized. The fracture should heal in about 6 weeks if properly treated. 6 weeks. The Zenthari physician, Dr. Miltana, was shocked. Most species required months to heal from such injuries, and some never fully recovered. But Jake spoke of it as if it were routine, just another inconvenience to overcome. Commander Lisa Hayes woke up 3 hours after being brought aboard. Her first words were asking about her crew. When she learned they were still in cryosleep on the damaged ship, she tried to get up despite the protests of the medical staff. It took both Jake's assurance and Dr. Miltana's firm insistence to keep her on the bed. "You have a severe concussion," the doctor explained. "Your brain experienced significant trauma. You must rest." Lisa looked frustrated but nodded. "How long until I can return to duty?" "Several days at minimum." "We don't have several days." "My crew is being taken care of," Captain Vexilon said as he entered the medical bay. He'd come to meet these remarkable deathworlders personally. "My engineering team is aboard your vessel now, working to restore the cryosleep systems. We will revive your crew safely." Lisa studied him with sharp eyes. "Thank you, Captain. I'm Commander Lisa Hayes of the Earthship Freedom's Echo. We're grateful for your assistance." "Earth." Vexilon repeated the word. "That is your homeworld?" "Yes, 3rd planet in our solar system. We launched from there 6 months ago on an exploration mission." Thelmora, who had accompanied the captain, pulled up data on her portable display. "Commander Hayes, would you be willing to tell us about Earth? For our records and to help us understand your species better." Lisa glanced at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. "Sure, what do you want to know?" "The environmental conditions of your world," Thelmora said. "Our scans suggest Earth is a Class 3 death world. Is this accurate?" Lisa looked puzzled. "Death world? I don't know what that classification means in your system. Earth is just Earth. It's our home." Over the next hour, Lisa and Jake described their planet to an increasingly horrified audience. They talked about Earth's weather systems, where storms could level entire cities, and temperature variations ranged from deadly heat to lethal cold. They mentioned the tectonic activity that caused earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. They described the thousands of species of microorganisms that could cause disease and death. "And the predators?" Thelmora asked hesitantly. "Your world has predators?" "Lots of them," Jake confirmed. "Though most don't bother humans anymore. We're pretty good at defending ourselves." "Define defending ourselves," Vexilon requested. Jake thought for a moment. "Well, in the old days, humans used tools and fire to drive off predators. We hunted the ones that threatened us. Now we mostly just avoid the dangerous ones and relocate them if they get too close to our settlements." The Zenthari exchanged glances. These humans spoke of hunting predators as if it were normal. They treated a world of constant danger as just another day. "What kind of species evolved in such conditions?" The answer came when Danny Price was brought out of surgery. His arm had been set and placed in a regenerative cast that would accelerate healing. Despite the sedatives in his system, the first thing he asked was whether he could return to the Freedom's Echo to continue repairs. "You just had surgery," Dr. Miltana protested. "You need rest." "The reactor core is unstable," Danny argued. "If it fails, the cryosystems fail. My crew dies. I need to fix it." This was the pattern. Every human put their crew and mission above their personal welfare. It wasn't recklessness or stupidity. It was a fundamental value system forged by a world that demanded cooperation for survival. On Earth, humans learned that the group's survival meant individual survival. They protected each other fiercely. Captain Vexilon made a decision. "We will stabilize your ship and revive your crew. But I need to understand what we're dealing with." "Commander Hayes, how many humans are on your vessel?" 26 total, including the 3 of us. The others are in cryosleep. "And you all volunteered for this mission? Knowing the dangers of space exploration?" Lisa smiled slightly. "Captain, Humans have been exploring dangerous places for thousands of years. It's what we do. We see something unknown and we want to understand it. Yes, it's risky, but staying safe on Earth forever? That's not living. That's just existing. Delmore found this philosophy fascinating. Most spacefaring species explored out of necessity or economic opportunity. They calculated risks carefully and avoided danger when possible. But humans seemed to seek out challenges to test themselves against the unknown. Their death world had taught them that safety was an illusion, and that growth only came through facing fears. Over the next day, the Zenthari engineering team worked aboard the Freedom's Echo. Engineer Korvath led the effort, assisted by Danny Price, who absolutely refused to stay in medical. The human engineer's approach to problem-solving amazed the Zenthari crew. "This coupling is damaged," Korvath observed, examining a critical connection in the cryo system. "We need a replacement part. Without it, we cannot proceed." Danny studied the problem for a moment, then looked around the engine room. "We don't need a replacement. We can modify this power relay from the secondary systems. It's not rated for this application, but if we adjust the flow parameters and add a redundant safety, it'll work." "That's not standard procedure," Korvath protested. The specifications assume you have access to proper parts and facilities," Danny interrupted. "We don't, so we improvise. Watch." The human engineer proceeded to create a solution using materials that the Zenthari would have dismissed as unsuitable. But his modifications were clever, accounting for stress factors and failure points with an intuitive understanding of engineering principles. Within 2 hours, he had the system operational. "How did you learn to do that?" Korvath asked, genuinely impressed. "Earth," Danny said simply. "When you grow up on a world that's constantly trying to kill you, you learn to make do with what you have. You adapt or you die. My ancestors survived ice ages, droughts, floods, and plagues. They passed down that adaptability to me. One by one, the cryopods were brought back online. The human crew members were revived carefully, each one waking to find their ship being repaired by friendly aliens. The Zenthari crew met more humans. Pilot Sam Turner, who immediately asked about the ship's flight capabilities. Weapons Officer Kyle Grant, who assessed the tactical situation with practiced efficiency. And Medical Officer Karen White, who took over the care of her injured crew members with competent authority. Karen worked with Dr. Miltana, sharing knowledge about human medicine. The Zenthari physician was shocked by some of the treatments humans considered routine. They could survive broken bones, significant blood loss, and traumatic injuries that would kill most species. Their immune systems fought off infections aggressively. Their bodies could adapt to different environments through simple exposure. "We had to be tough," Karen explained. "Earth doesn't forgive weakness. Every generation of humans that survived did so because they could heal, adapt, and overcome. It's built into our genetics now." Captain Vexilon finally met Captain Ryan Foster, the commander of the Freedom's Echo. Ryan was a tall man with gray in his hair and scars that told stories of previous adventures. He thanked Vexilon formally for the rescue, but immediately started discussing the next steps. "We need to complete repairs and continue our mission," Ryan said. "We've already been delayed too long." "Your ship was nearly destroyed," Vexilon pointed out. "You could have died out here." "Why continue?" Ryan looked at him with those intense human eyes. "Because that's what explorers do, Captain. We signed up to chart unknown space and find new worlds. One setback doesn't change our mission. It just makes us more careful going forward." This was the human way. They fell down and got back up. They faced impossible odds and found ways to win. They turned disadvantages into advantages through sheer creativity and will. Their death world had created a species that simply refused to quit, and now they were taking that attitude to the stars. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The repairs were progressing well when the sensors aboard the illuminated path detected something that made everyone nervous. 6 vessels approaching at high speed, their energy signatures matching known pirate configurations. The Krathuk raiders had found them. Captain Vexilon felt his blood run cold. The Krathuk were infamous throughout this sector as brutal raiders who captured ships and sold crews into slavery. They were warriors by nature, evolved from pack hunters on their homeworld. Their vessels were armed and armored, designed for combat rather than exploration. Against 6 of them, the illuminated path stood almost no chance. "Evasive course," he ordered. "Prepare to jump to hyperspace." "Captain, we're locked by their targeting systems," the pilot reported. They're blocking our escape vectors with coordinated positioning. If we try to jump, they'll intercept us before we can enter hyperspace. The Krathuk were using standard pirate tactics, boxing in their prey before moving in for the kill. The illuminated path had minimal defensive weapons, just enough to fend off small threats. Against a coordinated attack by 6 raider vessels, they would be overwhelmed in minutes. "Transmit our distress signal," Vexilon commanded. "Maybe a patrol ship will be close enough to help." But everyone on the bridge knew the truth. Help was hours away at best. They had minutes before the raiders reached weapons range. On the Freedom's Echo, alarms started blaring. The human crew had been coordinating repairs when their own sensors picked up the approaching threat. Captain Ryan Foster reached the bridge in seconds, taking in the tactical display with a quick glance. 6 hostiles, heavy weapons closing fast, Sam Turner reported from the pilot station. "The Zenthari ship is trapped." Ryan opened a communication channel to the illuminated path. "Captain Vexilon, this is Captain Foster. We're reading the same threat you are. Captain Foster, you should detach from our ship and flee while you can." Vexilon responded. "Your vessel is damaged. You cannot help us. With respect, Captain, we can help. And we don't abandon allies." Ryan turned to his crew. "Battle stations. Sam, I need you at helm. Kyle, get weapons online. Danny, I need every bit of power you can squeeze out of the reactor." The human crew moved with startling efficiency, each person flowing to their station without hesitation. They'd trained for combat situations, and it showed in their calm professionalism. On the illuminated path, the Zenthari watched through their sensor feeds, wondering what the humans thought they could accomplish. "Our weapons are functional, but limited," Kyle Grant reported. "Railguns are operational, but ammunition is at 60%. Missile tubes are loaded. Point defense systems are active." "Good enough," Ryan said. "Thelmora, are you listening?" The Zenthari science officer responded immediately. "Yes, Captain Foster. I need you to share your sensor data with us, full tactical feed, and tell your captain that we have a plan." Minutes later, both ships were coordinating their defense. The Zenthari crew listened as Ryan outlined his strategy, and at first they thought he was insane. The plan relied on using the Freedom's Echo as bait, drawing the raiders into specific positions where the damaged human ship could maximize its firepower, while minimizing exposure to return fire. "You want to use debris from the asteroid field as cover?" Korvath asked incredulously. "The density is too high. You'll damage your ship further." "Not if Sam flies it right," Ryan said confidently. "And our hull can take more punishment than yours. We're built for rough conditions." The Krathuk raiders opened communication channels, broadcasting demands in multiple languages. They wanted both ships to surrender, their crews to submit to capture, and all valuable cargo to be transferred immediately. Failure to comply would result in destruction. Ryan's response was simple: negative. The raiders seemed surprised by the refusal. Most victims surrendered quickly when faced with overwhelming force. But these humans were different, and the Krathuk were about to learn why. "They're accelerating to attack speed," Kyle announced. "Weapons hot. They're spreading formation to surround us." "Perfect," Ryan said. "Sam, execute maneuver Alpha." "Kyle, wait for my mark." The Freedom's Echo suddenly fired its maneuvering thrusters in what seemed like a random pattern. The ship spun and dove, moving erratically through space. To the Krathuk, it looked like a desperate attempt to evade. To the Zenthari, it looked suicidal. But Sam Turner knew exactly what he was doing. The damaged human ship dove into the asteroid field, using chunks of rock as temporary shields while maintaining enough speed to stay unpredictable. The Krathuk followed, confident they could corner their prey among the debris. That was their first mistake. "Now, Kyle," Ryan ordered. The railguns fired. Unlike energy weapons that could be deflected by shields, these were solid projectiles accelerated to tremendous velocities. They punched through the lead raider's shields as if they weren't there, tearing into the hull and causing catastrophic damage. The raider ship spun off course, trailing atmosphere and debris. "Target 2 firing," Kyle announced. The missile tubes launched their payload, smart weapons that adjusted course to track their target. The second raider tried to evade, but the missiles were relentless. 2 struck home and the raider's engines exploded. The Krathuk formation broke apart, suddenly wary. They'd expected an easy capture, but instead, they'd lost 2 ships in seconds. These prey were predators in disguise. "Illuminated path, now's your chance," Ryan transmitted. "Break for the edge of the field. We'll keep them busy. Vexilon wanted to refuse, wanted to stay and help, but he knew his ship would only be a liability in combat. His duty was to his crew's survival. All power to engines. Get us clear. The Zenthari ship accelerated away, leaving the Freedom's Echo to face 4 remaining raiders alone. It should have been suicide. But the humans had grown up on a death world, where survival meant fighting against impossible odds and winning through skill, courage, and sheer determination. Sam Turner flew like the ship was an extension of his body, weaving through asteroids and debris with precision that defied probability. Kyle Grant fired with calculated efficiency, each shot carefully aimed to maximize damage. Danny Price rerouted power on the fly, balancing shields, weapons, and engines in real-time adjustments that kept them in the fight. The Krathuk tried to use their numbers advantage, attacking from multiple angles. But the humans had fought in simulations 100 times more complex than this. They'd prepared for every contingency, drilled for every scenario. Their training on Earth's military academies had been brutal and unforgiving, because anything less would mean death. One raider tried to ram them, thinking the damaged ship would be easy to cripple. Sam saw it coming and vented atmosphere from the portside tubes, using the explosive decompression to push the Freedom's Echo sideways. The raider shot past them, and Kyle put 3 railgun rounds through their engine section. 3 down, Kyle reported. 3 remaining. But the Freedom's Echo was taking damage too. Shields were failing, hull breaches were spreading, and the reactor was running dangerously hot. They'd fought brilliantly, but the numbers were catching up to them. Then something unexpected happened. The illuminated path came back. Captain Foster, we're in position, Vexilon transmitted. Our weapons may not be strong, but we can provide support fire. Ryan smiled. These Zenthari had courage after all. Welcome back. Target the raider at coordinates Delta 4. We'll take the other 2. The battle reached its crescendo. 2 ships, one designed for science and one barely functional, stood together against raiders who'd terrorized this sector for years. The Zenthari crew watched in awe as the humans executed maneuvers that should have been impossible, made shots that defied odds, and refused to surrender even when victory seemed beyond reach. A 4th raider fell to combined fire, then a 5th, caught between the Freedom's Echo's railguns and the Illuminated Path's energy weapons. The final raider, seeing its entire fleet decimated, made the smart choice and fled at maximum speed. Silence filled the communication channels for a long moment. Then cheering erupted on both ships. They'd won. Against all probability, they'd survived. The human crew of the Freedom's Echo celebrated their victory with the kind of enthusiasm that the Zenthari found both admirable and slightly concerning. They laughed, shouted, and congratulated each other with physical contact that would have been inappropriate in most galactic cultures. But the Zenthari were beginning to understand that humans expressed emotion differently, more openly and physically than most species. Good flying. Sam, Captain Ryan Foster said, clapping the pilot on the shoulder. That dive through the asteroid field was perfect. Sam Turner grinned, his face flushed with adrenaline. I may have scraped the paint a bit, but we're still in one piece. More or less. More or less was an accurate description of the Freedom's Echo's condition. The ship had taken significant additional damage during the battle. Hull breaches had multiplied, several systems were offline, and the reactor was operating at barely safe levels. But they were alive, and to the humans that was what mattered most. Captain Vexilon contacted them immediately after the battle ended. Captain Foster, that was the most remarkable display of combat skill I've ever witnessed. Your crew's coordination and courage were extraordinary. Thank you, Captain, Ryan replied. Though we couldn't have done it without you coming back. That took real guts. We could not abandon you after you chose to help us. It would have been dishonorable. Vexilon paused. But I must admit I did not believe your plan would succeed. Fighting 6 raiders with a damaged vessel seemed impossible. Ryan smiled. Captain, humans have been doing impossible things for thousands of years. It's kind of our specialty. The next few hours were spent assessing damage and making emergency repairs. The human crew worked alongside the Zenthari, and the cooperation revealed interesting differences in their approaches. The Zenthari were methodical and precise, following established procedures and protocols. The humans were adaptive and creative, finding unconventional solutions to problems that standard procedures couldn't solve. Danny Price and Engineer Korvath became an effective team despite their different methods. When they encountered a damaged power coupling that should have required complete replacement, Danny welded together a temporary fix using spare parts from 3 different systems. Korvath was horrified at first, but when he ran the calculations, he realized the human solution would actually work. "How did you know that would be stable?" Korvath asked. Danny shrugged. "Experience. I've been fixing broken equipment since I was a kid. You learn to see patterns, understand how systems interact. Sometimes the book answer isn't the right answer." Medical Officer Karen White worked with Dr. Miltana to treat the wounded from both crews. A few Xanthari had suffered minor injuries during the battle's violent maneuvers, and several humans had new bruises and cuts from being thrown around during combat. Karen's treatment methods continued to surprise the Xanthari physician. "You inject chemicals directly into the bloodstream?" Dr. Miltana asked, watching Karen administer medication. "It's faster and more effective than topical application for many drugs," Karen explained. "Our bodies can handle it. We've been using this method for centuries. But the risk of infection, the trauma to tissue, we have strong immune systems and good healing. The benefits outweigh the risks," Karen smiled. "Doctor, humans survive for thousands of years with much more primitive medical care. We're tougher than we look." That evening, Captain Vexilon invited Captain Foster and several of his crew to the illuminated path for what humans called a meal. The Xanthari had prepared food that analysis suggested would be safe for human consumption, though they weren't entirely certain. The humans ate with apparent enjoyment, though they mentioned the food was a bit bland. "On Earth we use a lot of spices in our food," Lisa Hayes explained. "Salt, pepper, herbs. They add flavor. But many of those substances would be toxic to us," Thelmora said. "How can you consume them safely?" "Evolutionary adaptation," Jake Morris answered. "Our ancestors learned to use certain plants and minerals to preserve food and enhance taste. Over time, our bodies adapted to process them. Some of what we eat would probably make you sick." The conversation turned to Earth and humanity's place in the galaxy. Captain Vexilon had been thinking about this question since the humans first came aboard. A species from a Class 3 Deathworld changed everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about evolution and survival. "Captain Foster, I must ask your intentions," Vexilon said formally. "Humanity is unknown to the galactic community. Your appearance will cause significant discussion and possibly concern. Some species may fear you because of your Deathworld origins." Ryan considered this carefully. "Captain, humans have a long history of encountering other cultures. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it didn't. But we've learned that the best approach is honesty, respect, and a willingness to find common ground. We're not here to conquer or dominate. We're here to explore, learn, and hopefully make friends. And if others see you as a threat, then we'll prove them wrong. Humans can be fierce when threatened, as you saw today, but we prefer cooperation to conflict. We'd rather build than destroy." Ryan smiled. "Besides, from what you've told me, the galaxy has a lot to teach us. We'd be fools to start fights when we could be learning instead." Thelmora pulled up star charts and began discussing the location of various civilizations. "The nearest Galactic Council station is 3 days' travel from here. I recommend we escort you there. Your ship needs proper repairs and the Council will want to meet humanity officially." "Agreed," Ryan said. "Though I should warn you, humans are probably going to be very popular very quickly. We're naturally curious and there are billions of us back home who will want to explore the galaxy once they learn it's full of intelligent life." This prospect both excited and worried the Xanthari. An entire Deathworld species entering the galactic community at once? The implications were staggering. Humans would bring their strength, resilience, and adaptability to every corner of known space. They would push boundaries, solve problems in new ways, and probably cause a fair amount of chaos in the process. Over the next 3 days, the 2 ships traveled together toward the Council station. The crews continued to interact, share knowledge, and build friendships. The Xanthari learned about human music, art, and literature, discovering that Deathworlders created beauty alongside their practical survival skills. The humans learned about galactic politics, alien cultures, and the vast civilizations waiting to be explored. Sam Turner spent hours talking with the Xanthari pilots about different species' approaches to space travel. Kyle Grant discussed weapons technology and defensive strategies with the security team. Karen White and Dr. Miltana collaborated on a research paper about comparative physiology that would become famous in academic circles. Jake Morris and Thelmora developed a particular friendship based on their shared love of science. They spent entire shifts discussing physics, comparing human and Xanthari understanding of the universe. Jake introduced her to human theories about quantum mechanics and relativity. Thelmora explained how the Xanthari had solved problems with faster-than-light travel. "Your species' approach to science is fascinating," Thelmora said during one conversation. "You develop theories through experimentation and observation, often making mistakes and learning from them." "That's the scientific method," Jake confirmed. "We try things, fail, adjust, and try again. It's slow sometimes, but it works. Most species are more cautious. They calculate everything extensively before attempting experiments. Well, when your planet is trying to kill you constantly, you learn to act quickly and adjust on the fly. Caution is good, but sometimes you just have to try things and see what happens." As they approached the council station, Captain Vexilon prepared his official report. He chose his words carefully, knowing this document would be studied by diplomats, scientists, and leaders across the galaxy. He described humanity honestly. A species from a Class 3 deathworld who had achieved space travel through resilience, creativity, and an unbreakable will to survive. He noted their physical capabilities, their unusual tolerance for danger, and their fierce loyalty to their crew and species. He also emphasized their capacity for cooperation, their curiosity about the universe, and their desire for peaceful relations. The report included testimony from every crew member who'd interacted with humans, building a comprehensive picture of this remarkable new species. The station appeared on their sensors, a massive orbital facility that served as a hub for dozens of different civilizations. Ships of every design imaginable docked at its ports. Beings from across the galaxy lived and worked in its corridors. It was humanity's gateway to the wider universe. "Freedom's Echo, this is Station Control," came a transmission. "We've received notification of your arrival. Docking Bay 12 is prepared for you. Welcome to Gateway Station." Ryan Foster sat in his captain's chair, looking at the magnificent structure through the view screen. His crew stood at their stations, all of them feeling the weight of this moment. They were about to become the first humans to officially contact galactic civilization. Everything they said and did from this point forward would represent their entire species. "Well, crew," Ryan said quietly, "this is it. Humanity's first step into the